June 18, 2020. Atlanta, Georgia. 4:12 a.m. The call came just before sunrise. A young bride, found unresponsive in her hotel suite. Still in her wedding dress. No visible injuries, no sign of distress. Pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities say death by natural causes. Her mother never believed so. Everything changed when her best friend got pregnant for her husband 3 months after her death. Before the headlines. Before the autopsy. Before the questions. There was just Nia. Nia Chantel Davenport was born on April 22, 1991, in Decatur, Georgia. Her mother, Ramona, raised her alone, no siblings, no extended family nearby. Just the two of them. A one-bedroom apartment over a laundromat, where the scent of fabric softener clung to the walls and the sound of machines humming downstairs never stopped. Her mother worked nights. Nia learned early how to cook, clean, and pray. She'd tuck herself in, pack her own lunch, and leave little notes under her mother's coffee mug. "Don't forget to smile today. I love you." She was the kind of child people remembered. By 15, she was volunteering at Mount Haven Baptist. By 17, she was leading the children's choir. Not because someone asked her to, because she wanted to. Her dream wasn't fame or fortune. It was something simpler. She wanted to build a space where kids felt safe. A childcare center with sliding scale fees, weekend reading classes, meals for families who couldn't afford groceries. She already had the name picked out, The Nest. She earned her degree in early childhood education from a local college. No loans. Just scholarships, side jobs, and determination. She worked full-time as a kindergarten teacher at Pinebrook Elementary. Her co-workers said she'd spend her lunch break fixing zippers, tying shoelaces, reading the same picture books over and over, with the same warmth every time. Nia didn't just teach. She took care. Quietly. Every day. She met Davion Parks during a church outreach in 2017, handing out care packages to low-income families. They'd ride together to food drives. Share music. Pray. Laugh. He called her soft-spoken but solid. She called him a man with a mission. By 2019, they were engaged. To most people, it looked like the perfect match. Church-going. Stable. Aligned in faith. The kind of relationship people used as an example. But those close to her began to notice something. Nia smiled less. She stopped replying to texts as quickly. Some said she looked tired. Others assumed it was just stress from wedding planning. But there was one conversation her best friend never forgot. Nia had asked, in a soft, almost embarrassed voice, "Do you think it's normal to be nervous, even when everything looks right?" She brushed it off with a smile. But something lingered. Nia funded almost the entire wedding herself. Refused help. Said if she couldn't afford it, she didn't want it. She worked weekends, did tutoring in the evenings, skipped birthdays and bridal showers to save money. The centerpieces were hand-assembled. The invitations printed at home. Her dress was bought second-hand and tailored on a friend's sewing machine. Every inch of that wedding had Nia's fingerprints on it, except the venue. That was his choice. Her mother says she didn't push back. She just went quiet when it was brought up. There are pages in Nia's diary from the week before the wedding, dated June 12. The handwriting is neat, but the lines tremble slightly. Everyone says I should be excited. I know I should be. I keep trying. But I feel off. Not scared. Just unsure. Maybe it's just nerves. Or maybe I'm not listening to myself. God, help me not to second-guess what you've already given. One line was crossed out twice, as if she couldn't bring herself to leave it on the page. What if I'm making a mistake? The entry ends with a prayer. Still, she pressed forward. She always did. The night before the wedding, she asked her mother quietly, "Do you think people change after marriage?" Her mother laughed. Told her she was just anxious. Nia nodded. Smiled. And changed the subject. She walked down the aisle less than 24 hours later. What happened after that, after the vows, after the cake, after the music stopped, is a matter of record. But who she was before that night, is something only a few truly knew. Nia spent her life creating safe spaces for everyone else. She held other people's children when they cried. She stayed late after church to clean up other people's messes. She made a home out of whatever she had, even when it wasn't much. But what no one asked her, and what we must ask now, is whether anyone ever did the same for her. The night Nia Davenport took her vows, her face carried a calm only a few people could read. Some saw serenity. Others, who knew her best, weren't so sure. Standing beside her that evening was Davion Parks, known in Atlanta's indie scene as DJ. Age 33. A respected music producer. Sharp dresser. Well-spoken. Always polite. Always composed. He ran a small recording label and had built a name off collaboration, hip-hop beats mixed with gospel tones, spoken word layered over strings. His work was featured in community centers and college stages alike. He called his work redemption music. Said he was telling stories most men didn't live long enough to finish. And he was good at telling them. At the church, Davion's reputation was clean. He prayed in public. Volunteered for youth mentorship. Read scriptures out loud. Made eye contact when he spoke to you. He knew when to hold your hand. When to quote Corinthians. When to stay quiet. Even Nia's mother said, he seemed like the kind of man who had already been through the fire. And made it out whole. But stories, when repeated enough, start to sound rehearsed. Davion had been married once before. Divorced 4 years earlier. No children. No public fallout. Just gone. Quietly. The official reason, according to a distant cousin, was irreconcilable differences. But off the record, people said other things. Some whispered that his ex-wife had changed her number and moved counties. Others remembered arguments overheard through walls. One woman, who knew them both, recalled seeing his former wife in church one Sunday with sunglasses indoors. No one asked questions. They just prayed harder. That's the thing with men like Davion, they don't raise voices, they lower them. And they rarely leave marks you can photograph. An ex-girlfriend, who agreed to speak on condition of anonymity, offered a glimpse most never got. He never yelled. That wasn't his style. He'd ask questions. Over and over. Where I was. Who I was with. Why I laughed at someone's joke too long. And then he'd pray. Right after. Like the apology made it okay. I started deleting messages from people I'd known my whole life. Just to avoid the fight. I didn't call it control back then. I called it love. That's how it gets you. He never hit her. But she left anyway. She said the silence after their breakup was louder than any fight. I didn't talk about it for years. I thought maybe I overreacted. That's what he made me believe. But that version of Davion rarely made it into the circles Nia moved in. To her, he was composed. Caring. He opened the doors. He listened. He quoted poetry. He made her feel chosen. And maybe, in some ways, she was. A friend from church remembers a moment just weeks before the wedding. They were talking after service. Nia mentioned she wasn't sleeping well. She didn't say she was afraid. Just, tired. Like she was carrying something but didn't want to name it. Another bridesmaid recalls a private moment during the rehearsal dinner. Nia stepped outside to take a call. Davion followed. 10 minutes passed. When they returned, she had retouched her lipstick. Her voice was quiet. She didn't finish her meal. When someone asked if she was okay, she smiled and said, "I'm just overwhelmed." You know how weddings are. No one pressed further. Because Davian didn't raise suspicion. He removed it. He had a way of making people second-guess their instincts. He didn't deny things, he redirected. He'd say, "You know how people talk," or, "The enemy tries to attack what's good." And when he said it, it sounded reasonable. For a man who seemed so transparent, there was always a door behind him no one was allowed to open. He lived in clean lines. Controlled tones. He curated his image like a producer arranges a track, no wasted sound, no stray note. On paper, he was an asset. No priors. A few traffic citations. A minor business dispute over royalties from a local artist, but nothing that ever went to court. But what paper doesn't show, is tone. How someone sounds when they're alone with you. How they pause before answering. How they make you feel like every question is an accusation. Nia believed in redemption. She believed people could change. She believed prayer and patience and love could fix most things. Maybe that's what Davian counted on. And on June 17, 2020, beneath a domed church ceiling filled with flowers she'd arranged herself, Nia promised to stand beside him. By morning, she was gone. And the man who said he loved her was the last one to see her alive. In the videos from that weekend, she's always close to Nia. Helping fix her veil. Holding the bouquet during rehearsal. Laughing during the vows, not out of disrespect, but out of joy. They called each other soulmates. Just not the romantic kind. Aaliyah Simone Grant. 30 years old. Marketing consultant. Small business owner. College roommate turned maid of honor, turned something harder to explain. They met back in 2010 at Georgia State. Two girls in mismatched bed sheets and rented textbooks, figuring out life on student loans and late-night noodles. Nia was quiet, thoughtful, a list maker. Aaliyah? She moved fast. Thought fast. Laughed big. They balanced each other out. And over time, they became sisters without blood. 10 birthdays. 10 Christmases. 10 years of group chats and heartbreaks and brunches. Aaliyah was there when Nia got baptized. She was there when Nia's first real boyfriend ghosted her. She was the first to know about Davian. And the first to be asked to stand beside her on her wedding day. At the ceremony, Aaliyah's speech was the one that made people cry. Even the DJ paused the music to wipe his face. She told me once, Aaliyah said, that love shouldn't feel like trying to prove yourself. With him, she didn't feel like she had to. And that's how I knew. There's a photo, still floating online, where they're forehead to forehead, Nia's eyes closed, Aaliyah laughing with mascara halfway down her cheeks. But after the ceremony. After the photos. After Nia was found dead the next morning in the bridal suite. Everything changed. June 14, 2020. 11:42 a.m. Grady Memorial Hospital, Atlanta. The room was too quiet for a Sunday. A nurse turned off the heart monitor that had never beeped. And a mother, half-dressed, trembling, collapsed outside the double doors when she heard the words no parent should ever hear. We did everything we could. But there had been no CPR. No failed surgery. Just a young woman in a wedding dress, found cold before sunrise. And no one could say why. By 2 p.m., her body was transferred to the Fulton County Medical Examiner's office. Tag number, 5-2-9-7-1-8. Name, Davenport, Nia Chantel. Age, 29. Status, unresponsive. Cold. No trauma visible. Awaiting postmortem. She lay beneath surgical light. No makeup. No jewelry. Her nail polish chipped. Her mother had asked for the ring back. Davion had said he didn't know where it went. The autopsy began at 7:32 a.m. the next morning. Performed by Dr. Camille Benton. 23 years in the field. A professional whose job it was to make the dead tell their secrets. But this one stayed quiet. Nia's internal organs were normal weight. Lungs clear. No blood in her airways. No vomit. No fluid in the stomach. Toxicology screen, clean. No alcohol. No narcotics. No sedatives. No poisons. No sign of struggle. No bruises beneath the scalp. No broken vessels in the eyes. No pressure injury to the nose or mouth. Nothing between her teeth. No fractures in the hyoid bone or ribs. Even the sheets on the hotel bed were undisturbed. Dr. Benton closed her report 5 hours later. Signed her name. And for only the 5th time in her career, typed the words. Cause of death, undetermined. Manner of death, undetermined. To most people, that means nothing. To the family, it meant everything. The detective circled back to what made no sense. Could it have been sleep apnea? She had no history. No medical red flags. No excess weight. She wasn't even a snorer. Was it cardiac? No. Recent EKG clean. No genetic disorders. No arterial blockages. A seizure? Brain was normal. No scarring. No trauma. No hemorrhage. An allergic reaction. Her histamines were baseline. Throat was wide open. No swelling. Nothing ingested. No signs of choking. Dr. Benton offered her professional opinion on record. If this was an unnatural death, it was executed with care. The kind of care that doesn't leave evidence. That raised the next theory. Smothering. But soft suffocation leaves hints. A faint bruise. A fiber. Petechiae, tiny red dots in the eyes or mouth. But there were none. No pillow indentations. No signs of struggle on the bedding. No defensive bruises. Her fingernails were intact. No skin or fibers beneath them. Her face looked serene. Peaceful. Too peaceful. On June 18, 2020, at exactly 9:23 a.m., Aaliyah arrived at Grady Memorial Hospital. Surveillance footage shows her parking across 2 lines. She ran through the entrance. Witnesses remember her yelling Nia's name before staff led her to the family area. She stayed for 2 hours. Spoke briefly to Nia's mother. Was seen sitting alone, holding her phone, not typing. Just staring. And then. Nothing. She didn't speak at the memorial, though she'd been scheduled to. She left halfway through the service. Said she wasn't feeling well. She never visited the grave. Didn't respond to messages from friends. And for someone who once documented every moment, from outfit selfies to coffee orders, her silence online was immediate. Facebook, deleted. Instagram, gone. Aaliyah vanished in every digital sense. Then, 3 weeks later, she moved out of Atlanta entirely. No goodbye post. No new job announcement. She simply packed up her 2-bedroom apartment in East Point and left Georgia behind. Friends said she needed time. That grief looked different for everyone. That maybe she was broken in ways she couldn't explain. And maybe they were right. But then came February. February 5, 2021. Aaliyah walked into a cafe on Auburn Avenue, 7 months after Nia's death. The barista remembered her. Said she ordered her usual oat milk chai. But this time, she was visibly pregnant. Not just, barely showing. Third trimester. And just like that, she was back. In town. Without explanation. No baby shower. No online posts. No one even knew who the father was. When asked, she gave different answers. To one person, it's complicated. To another, I'm doing this alone. To others, nothing at all. She didn't return to Nia's church. Didn't stop by Nia's mother's house, a place she once visited weekly. She drove a new car. Wore looser clothes. Walked differently, some said. And most telling of all. She no longer wore the gold infinity necklace that she and Nia had exchanged back in college. The one they swore they'd wear, for every big moment. The one Nia was buried in. When asked by a mutual friend if she wanted to talk, Aaliyah said. There's nothing left to say. Some things don't get closure. But the questions didn't go away. Because timelines don't lie. And silence eventually turns into sound. She may have buried the friendship. She may have rewritten her story. But she couldn't erase what came next. Because every decision has a timestamp. And every return carries weight. Davion declined to view the body. Told the hospital chaplain he didn't want to remember her that way. Asked if the room could be blessed instead. He didn't ask for the dress back. Or the ring. But he did request the death certificate, twice. A second opinion was ordered. Dr. Harlan Jessup, forensic consultant. Retired but respected. He examined the scans. The lab work. The tissue slides. Every single detail. And on the final page, in his own handwriting, he added a note the family was never meant to see. Highly suspicious. No definitive markers. Suggest continued investigation. That line didn't change the report. But it changed how it was read. Because what do you do when a woman dies inside a locked hotel suite? With no injuries. No illness. No substances. No cause. When every test says nothing. But every instinct says everything. The case was returned to Atlanta PD. Filed under, pending additional evidence. No charges. No leads. No answers. Just a mother's scream echoing down a hospital hallway. And a silence so loud, it became part of the case. A month after the funeral, a letter arrived. White envelope. Gold seal. Addressed to Mr. Davion Parks, not the Davenports. Inside, a claims notification from Bright Rock National Life. Policy ID ending in 8117. Subject, payout processing, beneficiary confirmation. It was the first time Nia's mother heard the words, life insurance. She had spent the past 4 weeks buried in grief, not paperwork. But someone else had been making phone calls. Sending emails. Following up. Police had already started looking into it. Quietly. No press releases. No warnings to the family. They found 2 policies. One with Bright Rock. One with American Union. Both signed. Both verified. Both updated less than 6 weeks before the wedding. And both named the same man, Davion Parks. The hotel's IT team couldn't recover the missing footage. They checked backups. Nothing. The 33-minute window, right when Nia likely died, no longer existed in their system. To police, Davion insisted. I never left the room. But the logs said he did. The cameras said he did. The housekeeper heard what might have happened when he wasn't there. It didn't add up. Not for the detectives. Not for Nia's mother. She would have called me. If something was wrong, she would have found a way. I just know it. But Nia didn't call anyone. Not her mother. Not her best friend. Not even 911. Instead, in the middle of the night, something happened in that room that only one person walked away from. It was a Monday morning. June 8, 2021. Cloudy skies. 72 degrees. Davion Parks left his cousin's apartment in Forest Park at exactly 8:07 a.m. He was headed to a breakfast spot just off Old Dixie Road. 2 blocks away, 3 unmarked cars waited behind a gas station. By 8:14 a.m., the man who had once stood in front of hundreds in a white tuxedo was being pressed against the hood of a patrol car. The charge: first-degree murder and insurance fraud. He didn't fight. Didn't ask why. He simply said, "Can I call my lawyer now?" The arrest didn't come from one mistake. It came from many, stacked like cards. What cracked the case open wasn't blood. Wasn't fingerprints. It was a silver MacBook Pro found inside a gym bag in the trunk of Davion's car. He told officers it belonged to a client. Said he hadn't used it in months. But the receipt said otherwise. Purchased under his name. Delivered to his condo. Activated using a Depark Sounds email address. The screen had been wiped clean. Not once, twice. Factory reset. Encrypted. But technology doesn't forget easily. Georgia Bureau of Investigation's Cybercrime Division began reconstruction. It took 6 days. What they found was chilling. Searches made from the laptop. Undetectable poisons. How long does it take someone to die in their sleep? Suffocation without struggle. How long before life insurance pays out for accidental death? Pillows that muffle sound. Some of them were searched on the same day Davion and Nia picked up their wedding license. One document recovered from cache files was a screenshot of a life insurance policy. The file name: juneplanfinal.png. Inside that folder, 2 PDFs. Both policies listing Nia as the insured. Davion as the sole beneficiary. One included an accidental death clause. Value: $700,000. Both policies were updated less than a month before the wedding. Davion had told Nia's mother he didn't know anything about her insurance. That must have been something she handled. But his email showed otherwise. A single burner account. mtrustfreedom@email.com. Linked to no name. No recovery phone number. Inside the drafts folder. One unsent email. Subject: payout structure. Attached, screenshots of policy documents, and a chart estimating 6 to 8 weeks for full payout. He never sent it. He saved it. Dated July 2, 5 days after Nia was buried. Investigators said. He thought wiping the laptop would erase intent. It didn't. His fingerprints were all over the digital timeline. He searched. He planned. And he waited. When police reviewed his keycard logs, his hotel exits, and the timing of his digital footprints, they noticed it all pointed to one fact. Davion was moving while Nia was dying. He was in the hallway. He was outside. But publicly, he was grief itself. He posted one Instagram story 3 days after her death. A black screen. 3 words. Still can't believe. That was it. No funeral pictures. No tribute. No mention of her name again. He disappeared from the internet the following week. Inside his home office, officers found one of Nia's journals, stuffed in a drawer, pages bent. It was the same diary she'd brought on the honeymoon. She never got to write in it. Only one page had ink. It simply read: "Try to rest tonight. Tomorrow's forever." When they booked him, Davion wore a navy shirt and gold chain. He joked with the desk sergeant about getting this cleared up fast. During the interview, he asked for water. He didn't cry. He didn't ask about Nia. He never said her name once. On his confiscated second phone, a newer model hidden in his luggage, they found a single voicemail. It came in at 7:52 a.m. the morning after Nia was found. It was from her mother. "Davian, I just heard. Please call me. What happened? Please." The message was never played. It was marked unheard. August 2, 2021. Courtroom 3C, Fulton County Superior Court. It had been 13 months since Nia Davenport's death. The media had moved on. But the whispers hadn't. Now, the courtroom was full, of grief, of tension, of eyes that had waited too long for answers. At the center of it all sat Davian Parks. Buttoned up. Clean-shaven. Expression unreadable. And directly behind him, near the back row, sat a woman who had tried everything to stay out of that courtroom. Aaliyah Simone Grant. She didn't wear makeup that day. She didn't wear black. Just a loose white maternity dress, and a thin gold necklace, one Nia had given her 6 years earlier. No one spoke to her. No one sat beside her. She clutched her phone in one hand. And her stomach with the other. The trial began with opening statements. The prosecution laid out its spine: a mysterious death, a groom who couldn't keep his lies straight, and 2 insurance policies signed just weeks before Nia died. But by day 2, the case shifted. Because what they needed wasn't just evidence. They needed someone. Aaliyah had been subpoenaed. Twice. And twice, she had avoided it, claiming health, harassment, emotional distress. The judge had had enough. "You will testify, Ms. Grant. Or you will be held in contempt and jailed." So, on the morning of August 4th, she took the stand. She didn't raise her head. She didn't meet Davian's eyes. She was sworn in with a shaky voice and a glance at the gallery, where Nia's mother sat in a black suit, clutching a velvet program from the wedding. Not once did she look away. The prosecutor's voice was calm. But deliberate. "Ms. Grant, were you in an intimate relationship with the defendant?" A pause. "Yes." "Was this during the time he was engaged to Ms. Davenport?" Another pause. "Yes." The silence in the room could have cracked stone. But it wasn't over. The prosecutor walked slowly to the evidence desk. Picked up a folded document. Turned to the jury. "This is a certified DNA test." Court ordered. He laid it flat on the podium. "It confirms that the child Ms. Grant is currently carrying, was fathered by Mr. Parks." It didn't feel like a bombshell. It felt like something worse. A betrayal that had been whispered, now spoken aloud. One juror blinked hard. Another scribbled something and underlined it twice. And then Nia's mother stood up. No words. No scream. Just a silent rise from her seat. A long walk past the aisle. And a door that clicked shut behind her. Aaliyah's voice cracked then. The prosecutor didn't press her further. He didn't need to. In the gallery, a woman who had once taught Nia's Sunday school class whispered. She stood beside her. Pregnant. And she smiled. In the defense box, Davian looked up. And for the first time that week, smiled too. The combined value, $412,000. One of them included an accidental death clause, doubling the payout. But only if the death wasn't due to illness. Not suicide. Not homicide. Only if it was ruled accidental. And Nia's official cause? Still listed as undetermined. That clause sat quietly between life and loophole. To Nia's mother, it made no sense. My daughter wasn't careless. She wouldn't just put his name on something like that. Not without telling me. Not without saying why. At the church, some remembered her budgeting wedding costs down to the dollar. Others recalled her saving up for a small daycare she wanted to start. She'd once told a pastor, "If I ever came into real money, I'd give most of it back to the kids." But there were no kids listed on either policy. Just Davion. Investigators brought in a forensic accountant. Kendrick Walsh. Former IRS fraud specialist. Quiet. Exact. The kind of man who sees through clean numbers like window glass. He sifted through Nia's cloud storage, banking data, and archived files. She had no debts. No hidden purchases. No gambling apps. No signs of desperation. But inside an old archived Gmail folder labeled "Finance, Old," he found something she probably thought was gone. A string of deleted emails between April 18 and May 22. 6 weeks before the wedding. Subject lines included: policy discussion follow-up. Urgent, rider addendum needs signature. DocuSign pending, second request. All of them were initiated by Davion. He copied Nia in. But she only replied twice. Once with, "Didn't we already go over this?" And then, 5 days later. "Okay." No other words. No confirmation. No signature screenshot. Still, both policies were processed as digitally approved. No error flags. No security holds. No family witnesses. When questioned by police, Davion didn't hesitate. He leaned back in the interview chair, arms crossed. Said they'd gone over all that stuff. Said Nia was being responsible. Said she didn't want to make her mama worry. Then added, "Isn't that what smart couples do before they tie the knot?" But her friends remembered something else. She didn't even want to share a joint account. Said she needed to see who he really was first. Then came the part that made Kendrick Walsh pause. A piece of metadata hidden in the back end of Davion's Google Drive. A file, now deleted, titled ndfutureplan_final.pdf. Created, May 19. Deleted, May 24. Never opened again. There was no backup. No preview. No print record. Only the file name remained in ghosted metadata. ND. Nia Davenport. Future plan. Final. It was created 3 days after the accidental death clause was finalized. And 5 days before they stood at the altar. Walsh gave his final assessment. These documents didn't just come out of nowhere. Someone planned this. Whether it was legal or not, it was strategic. Davion had called both insurance companies. 6 total inquiries. 4 voicemails. 2 live conversations. 1 email marked urgent. He told them he'd wait until the death certificate was corrected. But he never asked for an update from the police. Never requested a second autopsy. Never pressed for answers. Only for confirmation. The Davenports were never consulted. Never listed. Never even told it existed. Her mother sat on the edge of her bed when detectives read her the summary. She didn't cry. She just shook her head and whispered. If she didn't die from an accident, then why would he expect to get paid? The report was submitted back to APD. The tone of the case shifted. From confusion, to calculation. From tragedy, to theory. The last photo of them together was taken at 11:47 p.m. Nia, smiling, her arm laced through Davion's. Her veil slightly tilted. Her eyes soft. No one in that ballroom would have guessed it would be the final picture before the headlines. By 12:04 a.m., the elevator cameras showed them stepping onto the top floor. Suite 402. Presidential. Rose petals on the bed. A complimentary bottle of champagne. A folded note from hotel staff, "Mr. and Mrs. Parks, congratulations." From that moment forward, no one saw Nia Davenport alive again. Davion told the police he never left her side. Said they had been watching their wedding clips. That she fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. That he only noticed something was wrong around dawn. But the electronic trail he left behind said otherwise. Digital keycard logs revealed that Davian exited room 402 at 1:12 a.m. Re-entered at 1:29 a.m. Exited again at 2:07 a.m. Re-entered at 3:11 a.m. That's nearly 90 minutes unaccounted for. CCTV from the hallway near the stairwell shows him barefoot on the first exit. His shirt is untucked. Phone in hand. He pauses at the vending machine but doesn't buy anything. On the second exit, he's dressed differently. Shoes on. Phone gone. Moving faster. He passed the front desk at 2:10 a.m. Hotel clerk Jamal Griffin remembered him. He didn't say anything. Didn't make eye contact. Just moved through like he was late for something. There's a camera pointed toward room 402. It's the only camera covering that stretch of hallway. It has no footage between 2:05 and 2:38 a.m. Hotel technicians could find no malfunction, no maintenance flag. The hard drive simply skipped. 33 minutes. Gone. It was during that gap that a maid, Yvonne Sturgis, was delivering fresh towels to room 406. She paused outside the stairwell door near room 402. I heard someone crying. Not sobbing. Not wailing. Just, low. Constant. Like she didn't want anyone to hear. She kept walking. Didn't knock. Didn't report it. Later, she would say it didn't sound like a fight. It sounded like someone trying not to break. Nia's closest friends remembered she hadn't been herself in the days leading up to the wedding. One bridesmaid said she seemed distracted. Her maid of honor, Aaliyah, had told her. Girl, you need sleep. In her last diary entry, written 2 days before the wedding, Nia scribbled. I feel tired. Not sure if this is nerves, or something else. When first responders entered suite 402 at 5:06 a.m., Davian was already fully dressed. Pressed slacks. Black undershirt. No shoes. They described him as composed, but oddly reserved. He stood back. Didn't touch her. Didn't cry. He just kept saying. She was fine when I went to sleep. The television was still on. Paused on a still frame from their wedding video. Nia laughing. The toast mid-air. The room around her glowing with candlelight. The bed was neatly made, except for a single corner pulled down. Pillowcases were freshly replaced, a set of black silk ones from Nia's overnight bag. One of them still damp. No explanation. No bruises. No signs of a struggle. Nothing conclusive. The coroner later noted a peculiar detail. Her windpipe wasn't obstructed. But there was slight pressure to the larynx, just enough to leave a trace, not enough to kill. Maybe enough to quiet. The courtroom didn't gasp. It just sank. Because now it wasn't just a murder case. It was a love triangle soaked in silence. And an unborn child whose father might spend the rest of his life behind steel bars. Gasps didn't follow. Only stillness. Because at this point, even the worst possibilities didn't feel like speculation anymore. Did Ms. Davenport ever know about your relationship? She found out the night before the wedding. And what happened? She confronted me. She cried. She asked me how long. I couldn't answer. Aaliyah began to tremble. The tissue she clutched had already torn in her palm. Did she confront Mr. Parks? Yes. I left them arguing in the hotel hallway. And you didn't see her after that? No. Did you know Davian was planning to harm Nia? Aaliyah shook her head. But you said he told you he would handle her. What did you take that to mean? I thought he meant he'd calm her down. talk her out of canceling the wedding. The courtroom didn't buy it. Not fully. And Aaliyah, she knew it. Her voice cracked. Not from performance, but from pressure. I didn't know he would kill her. I didn't know. I swear to God, if I had known. She broke. Her breakdown wasn't the theatrical kind. No outburst. No shouting. Just a slow crumble. Like someone who had built her life out of secrets. And was now sitting in the ruins of every single one. The judge called for a recess. But Aaliyah didn't move. The bailiff helped her down from the stand, gently, almost like lifting someone from a wreckage. She walked past the jury. Then past Davion. And that's when it happened. He turned toward her. And smiled. November 12, 2021. Fulton County Superior Court. 8:56 a.m. 12 jurors return after just under 6 hours of deliberation. Their faces unreadable. Their posture stiff. At the defense table, Davion Parks doesn't speak. He adjusts his jacket. Smooths it down. No tie today. Nia's mother sits behind him, fingers interlaced so tightly her knuckles shine white. The clerk stands. Voice steady. Reads the verdict. On the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, guilty. A breath leaves the room. One juror wipes her eyes. Davion doesn't flinch. The judge asks him to rise. He does, slowly, as if rehearsed. What comes next is brief. Final. Surgical. Mr. Parks, this court sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. You planned the death of a woman who trusted you with her heart, her future, her name. That is not just murder. That is the destruction of a covenant. And for that, you will spend the rest of your natural life behind bars. Davion nods. Twice. Not defiant. Not broken. Just, done. But even with the verdict read aloud, there was still one unanswered question that lingered like fog in the courtroom. How did he do it? The autopsy had offered no answers. No bruising. No toxins. No trauma. Just the word every mother fears seeing stamped on paper. Undetermined. But in the final week of trial, something shifted. A quiet, gray-haired toxicologist took the stand. Not from Georgia, but from a private lab in Connecticut. She held up Nia's retested blood panel. Explained the abnormalities to the jury in words even a child could understand. There were elevated insulin levels, 4 times above baseline. In a non-diabetic woman, that's not just unusual, it's dangerous. The room didn't breathe. Combined with low blood glucose, and no medical need, the pattern is consistent with insulin overdose. She paused. Looked at the jury. If administered covertly, say, by injection while asleep, the victim would become disoriented, drift unconscious, then slip into fatal hypoglycemia. No smell. No taste. No struggle. Just sleep. And silence. Then the prosecution revealed the final piece. A receipt, buried in Davion's email archives, recovered weeks earlier. Dated just 9 days before the wedding. From an unlicensed supplement vendor. A small vial, untraceable insulin, labeled performance enhancer. Paid for in Bitcoin. That was the moment it stopped being speculation. Stopped being mystery. And started becoming truth. The kind you can't walk back from. The kind that doesn't need bruises to leave scars. Outside, the city is watching. News vans. Protesters. And candles. Hundreds line the steps of the courthouse. Children hold signs shaped like hearts. Teachers from Nia's school wear shirts printed with her name in gold letters. Someone plays her favorite gospel song from a speaker balanced on a folding chair. This isn't justice, a woman says. It's consequence. Justice would be Nia still here, opening that daycare she dreamed about. Aaliyah Grant never reappears in public. Her testimony triggered a storm she couldn't outrun. By midnight, she's escorted out of state by federal agents. Entered into the witness security program not because of what she did, but because of what people believe she allowed. You smiled in her wedding photos. You stood beside her while lying in her bed. Death threats. Doxing. Even strangers showing up to her sister's job. By morning, she was gone. Her phone numbers, disconnected. Her accounts, erased. Back at the home Nia once shared with her mother, silence lingers longer than it should. In a small room off the kitchen, a framed photo sits on a shelf, Nia in her cap and gown, smiling as though the future couldn't touch her. Below it, her kindergarten teaching certificate. And taped beneath that, a sticky note in Nia's handwriting. Remember why you started. Her mother reads it every morning. Then lights a candle. Every day. Davion is transferred to Georgia Diagnostic and Classification Prison. Inmate #GDC 154291. General population. No press. No visitors. One corrections officer later reports he tore out the pages of his Bible that mentioned betrayal. Aaliyah Simone Grant, now 8 months pregnant, left Georgia that same week. Placed into federal protection after death threats and online harassment became impossible to manage. She was moved under a sealed alias. A small town. Out west. What she knew, and what she didn't know, would be debated for years. In the eyes of many, she was a betrayer. To others, a pawn. Before she left, she gave a written statement to Nia's mother. One sentence stood out. I would take it all back if I could, but I can't return what I never deserved. She gave birth in another state. The child bears no connection to Davion's name. In the months following the verdict, candlelight vigils continued across Atlanta. At one event, Nia's former students stood in a circle, each holding one white flower. As they placed the flowers beneath her photo, a small girl, no older than 6, whispered. She said I was smart enough to be a doctor. I still want to be one. The camera caught her smile. It lasted only a second. But that moment meant everything. And yet, despite the conviction, despite the evidence, some questions will never have clean answers. What exactly happened in that hotel suite? Did she ever wake up? Did she see his face one last time? And what does it mean, to vow your life to someone who's already planned your death? Nia Chantel Davenport was 29. Devoted. Generous. And she died with no visible wounds. But this wasn't a story about how she died. It's a story about the silence between what we see and what we sense. If your best friend knew something, but said nothing, could you forgive them? Let us know in the comments below.